All right, so we're back. That's what 5'6" Elijah Craigs will do. But we're back, and
5 or 6. That's it.
I'm just being modest.
That's all.
So yeah, so basically, what I was alluding at or trying to get at is that I do practice Buddhism, but as a Catholic, and I know a lot of people are gonna go, you can't do that, or I can at least understand where people could see where it's not possible. But my key point on that, no matter what, whether you do that or not, is we have a problem. And I think we have an obligation in society today is as Christians, and the big point, you'll hear people, they'll reiterate this time and time again as their like spearhead, as their point against Christianity, is that Christians in modern society do not practice what they preach. What are your thoughts on that, Shannon?
Okay, so for me, first of all, I think that's a totally correct observation. You know what I mean? I do think that Christians have a problem with not practicing what they preach, and this, Shane, I think this points back to some of the things we've been talking about, sort of like, just offline, right? Where we speak about faith without works being dead,
Amen.
right? You've got to practice what you preach. But here's the thing, and I think this can kind of get us back to the point where we talk about the trans and the LGBTQ and the social justice and all of that, right? There's a difference between practicing what you preach and pointing out what's wrong with the culture, right? You can say Christians do not practice what they preach, and I believe that to be true. I believe we do not practice what we preach, right? We don't, we have a tendency to believe that practicing what you preach, whether it's on the ultra right or the neocons, right? It's about Christians basically taking over the world, right, and becoming influencers in a dominant and forceful way, right? Or it's about being totally to the point of being on the left where anything goes, and nihilism is sort of the objective, right? So I think really what needs to happen is that Christians need to really observe, and I'm speaking in terms of the Christian family as a whole. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just talking about Catholics, right? I'm not just talking about the Orthodox or the Oriental Orthodox or the Protestants, right? I'm speaking in general.
You're Christians.
Yeah.
And just real quick, because
Yeah.
I don't know why this is such a big misconception. Catholics are Christians.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
why
Let
there's
that-
I don't know why that's a modern.
Let that be understood. You know what I'm saying? And let us not.
It was the church founded by Jesus Christ. You know?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
hey,
But you're talking as Christians as a whole body.
I'm talking Christians as a whole body. We need to understand there's a distinction between telling somebody, that all are welcome, and and whatever sin or whatever you want to do is okay, right? And telling somebody, listen, man, I love you, right? You are a child of God, right? But there's a thing what they call precepts, right? Precepts is like, there are boundaries, right? And there are things that God calls us to do, whether we want to do them or not, right? Because that's what God calls us to do, right? And then there are things that, we do based on our own desires, right? We based on our own will, right? You say, man, look, man, I want to be, and you don't even got to take it to the point of like, I want to be a woman or I want to be a man, but you say, look, man, I want to make money, and I want to do it the easy way, and by any means necessary, I'm gonna do that, right? Whether it's I got to take a few people down, legally, right, by monopolizing, right, or I got to do it the Black Wall Street way, right? I got to take a few people down. I got to liquidate somebody. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that with Christianity, there's also this understanding that I think Paul said it in one of his gospels. And here's the thing, Paul's epistles are actually the oldest parts of the New Testament. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that, right? But he said, all have fallen short, of the glory of God.
Amen. 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We all need salvation, man. You know what I'm saying? We all need the grace of God, right? Because if we came under the law, my father, he said one time, he said, if we all got what we deserved, none of us would be here.
Exactly.
Right? Amen.
But if you're your own sacrifice, that's not true.
Right.
And that's the problem in modern society.
Right. So I think really, what you said is facts. You know what I'm saying? We Christians have a inclination to believe we are self-righteous when we speak. You know what I'm saying? Like I think
Well, and don't you think the biggest problem is this emphasis that we put on our inner self? We put this emphasis on the ego,
right.
That somehow if you if you look within and you try to seek the wise counsel of your ego as being the only counsel that you pursue, then everything is going to be okay. Right. And other people are going to love you, other people are going to follow you, but you have to turn inside first.
Right.
And when you were talking about Buddha, it got me thinking that Buddha did that in his process toward what he called enlightenment, Right. And he found that fell short,
Right.
Right.
And
one of the core tenets of Buddhism is to joyfully take part in the sorrows of the world, and when I think about that, I think about how that kind of bridges the gap between the outside world, the external objective reality that we all partake in,
right.
and the internal world, your inner sense that the only way you're going to find happiness is to take your inner self and conform it to the objective reality outside.
Right.
Right. And also too, one other thing I thought about the woman at the well. I've been thinking a lot about her lately, and how she had 5 husbands,
right.
In violation of the law. Yeah. And the Lord comes to her, she goes middle of the day at the hottest point in the day. That's the point when no one's at the well, because she's embarrassed. And the way that the Lord deals with her is he goes to her and he identifies where she has fallen short.
Yeah.
But and then he has a conversation with her, but at the end he says, "Go and sin no more."
Right.
And to me, the significant thing that's relevant to the conversation that we're having is that it doesn't really begin. I mean, I guess you can argue, debate, and there's a lot of there's a lot of conjecture to be had about Jesus saying, "Go and sin no more." but sin is very much an external thing, you know. And he points out the fact that she has 5 husbands, and according to the Mosaic law, in case people aren't aware, you're only supposed to have one, you know. So she is in violation of the law externally, you know, and he says, "Go and sin no more." Right. You know, saying you've got to remedy your external grievances, right? And you got to work your way in. You've got to work from the outside in, right. And I think that's the same approach that we've got to take toward gender as well, right. Because our gender is external. It's evidenced externally, in the same way that sin is evidenced externally. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. So, you know, here's one thing I want to say.
I guess the last thing I'd say is we have to strike this balance. We have to have resonance between the external objective world that we exist in and our internal world. Right. You know, it's not that we can't have this attitude that we're going to impose our internal sense upon the objective external experience we all partake in. Right. It's got to be this. There's a balance to be struck. Right.
Right.
You know?
I mean,
interesting.
You know, I think one thing that our culture has really bought into is this idea that it's all about the way I see myself. Right. I don't. There's something about that does not ring true for me. I think we are, whether we like it or not, we are subject to the way other people perceive us. Mm-hmm. Right.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? You can't, you know, I mean, and that just starts out with you know, your parents giving you a name. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, in most cultures, you know, even if those cultures wait, you know, and there are cultures who do that, you know, who wait until a couple of months or a couple of weeks to give the child a name based on what they see that child doing in their behavior.
I didn't know that. That's true. That's a
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. You know, but my thing is that, again, the child is not giving himself a name. The parents or the community is giving that child a name based on the child's behavior or the child's actions.
Nature, right?
Right.
Based upon the child's nature.
Right.
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 So you would say a certain amount of identity is already placed upon you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, a certain amount of identity is placed upon you, and you know, and even when you grow up, right? You start to begin to understand that you belong to a particular community. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Whether you're you might say, "Hey, I'm Black American." Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm Persian. You know what I'm saying? Well, the only way
Italian.
Right, or Italian, right? Right, you know. You only begin to understand that because that's coming from the outside. You know what I'm saying? You don't know that based on your own internal, like subjective you know, thoughts. You know what I'm saying? You pick up your identity, you know, language, right? I mean, let's just go with that, right? You pick up your language based on who you're around, the people you talk to the most, right? Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's one language or two languages, you know, you understand that because, you know, your identity becomes who you're with. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
Don't you kind of think it's weird that we, when we use the word language, mm-hmm. You know, I've thought a lot about this, that, you know, language is kind of our way of referring to the way that we relate to the external world, you know?
That one conducts himself in the external
Yes.
world.
Yeah. So it's primarily verbal, but it's not
Is
only
it though?
verbal.
Is it only verbal?
And that's a really good question to ask.
Yeah.
So don't you think that our customs and things would all kind of that those things would all be under the category of language? So you're of Italian background. So
That is true.
so you tend to prefer Italian food, right?
Sicilian.
Yeah. Or okay. So all right, Sicilian food, and you also prefer Sicilian wines. Now, and I'm of an Irish background, so I prefer Irish whiskey.
We can all agree that French wine is basically water with grapes dripped in them.
Okay.
Just
Well,
throwing
well,
that
I'm-
out there. Yeah.
But
Well,
but
well,
Irish
I'm-
whiskey's the best.
Well, I'm black, and as you know, we prefer what is it called? Hennessy.
Hennessy, there's nothing wrong with
And,
Hennessy.
and
I just wanna-
Remy
Hennessy
Martin.
is delicious.
I'm playing.
It's delicious. But don't you think that it's very odd that we don't, when we use the word language, we don't also refer to our food preferences, and we don't also refer to our our customs. You know, that we relegate language to only referring to the system of words that we use to communicate with people on the outside world, but it's really much more than that, because
so much more.
because the thing is, it's one thing to be, let's say, Spanish, or actually let's be more specific, actually let's say it's one thing to be French and drink French wine, eat French food, and perceive the world as somebody who is French, versus being
and surrender when any war comes in.
exactly yeah completely
Yeah.
any war, and then it's a completely other thing to be someone who has learned French as a second language. You know, the two are completely different. But the way that we refer to those two situations, we would say that that both people speak the same language. The natural born Frenchman who eats like a Frenchman, drinks like a Frenchman, behaves like a Frenchman.
Smoke cigarettes.
Yeah. Smoke cigarettes.
Party laugh.
And asks
Condescending
Yeah,
laugh.
and asks a whole bunch of questions about the meaning of existence and all kinds of stuff. They're just chain smokers and everything.
Just laughing.
So we would say that person speaks French in the same way that the person who has learned French as a second language speaks French, but the two are really not the same at all.
Right. Yeah.
That's a great point. I want to hit on that real quick.
Go for it.
And I think that's when you say language, when we use the term language, you couldn't have said this any better. And I'm glad that we're kind of winding down into this. When we say language, it is so much more than what we say. Because we already said earlier, and we've hinted about two times in this podcast, that what we say doesn't actually mean shit. It's what we do. So when we say language, it is so much more than what's said. Right. We all speak English, or at least a bastardized language, this for you English people, of the Queen's English, right? Mm-hmm. It's what we do that defines us, though. And we're really guilty of this in modern society. We all have, the whole world, I don't care what corner of the world you come from, we have so much in common. That's insignificant what we have in common. Yeah. We're all the exact same in our commonalities. It's what makes us different that is beautiful. And we don't acknowledge that. We see that as an affront to whatever we do as a collective over here.
Right. Yeah.
It's what makes us different that is beautiful. And you should take pride in that. Not to the point of, and I know pride, I don't want to splinter off into that.
Yeah.
You should take pride in your heritage. You should take pride in those differences because it is what defines you. The commonality is just what makes me talk to you because I'm like, oh, we have that in common. Then we start finding out our differences And if you and I can remain friends with those differences, that's what makes me admire you. The commonality, you're preaching to the choir. If I only hung out with people that agreed with everything I said, what a dull life. It is those differences. It is the point of a podcast. Right. It's so people can listen to something and they can hear those views, right? And I do find that very interesting. So you said that you have the outward world and then you have that inward self. And if we are truly made in God's image, okay? If we are truly made in God's image, and this is I'm expecting that letter still. If we're truly made in God's image, why would we not look inward with our creativeness, wanting to be heard, always trying to take what's in our mind, which I believe is where the soul is. I truly do. I think our soul is in our mind. If God is this force outside of the realm of laws, right? Of these things that are set in place, always was, all-knowing, right? And he's, even if you take science and mix it in, all right? The world, the universe is on its axis and it's expanding and growing and he's creative, right? Why wouldn't we be the same? Why would we not be the exact same if we were made in his image? Think about it. Everything we do, we're creating this podcast. We want to be heard. We want to do these things, right? If we're truly made in God's image, then I think you need to be able to blend that. And I know it sounds like I'm ranting. You need to be able to acknowledge that and adapt. That's why he gave us the Bible. He gave us this set of histories and rules and suggestions, because he knows at the end of the day that we will fall short, gentlemen. Right. We will not meet salvation on our own. It is impossible. But it doesn't mean that we can't have those differences. We can't look at those things. It's not this collective whole where you have to, like you said earlier, it's through works, right? And I know that's a Catholic thing. Everyone else thinks you can't do it through works. Talk's cheap. Talk is very cheap. I can cash those checks as long as you accept them. I'll keep signing that shit and sending them to you. And it doesn't mean anything. When you call me at 4 o'clock in the morning, am I answering the phone? Am I driving the 50, 60 miles to come get you? Am I holding myself to the standards that I preach? Right. And if you truly look inward and you see those things, do you make the cut? Do you measure yourself? Are the scales in balance? And that's what I was saying earlier. Christians fall short on that. As a Christian, I have fallen short on that. You will fall short on that. You have to better yourself daily, because if you do not better yourself, and this is where that Eastern philosophy really kind of takes hold. If I am not constantly trying to better myself, make myself more knowledgeable of the differences, not the similarities, of the differences, am I practicing what I preach? Then only then can I go forward and be like, not judge you, but I can truly have the word that is overused. I can have empathy towards you, not because I know that you're wrong and I'm right, because I truly can sympathize with the struggle you're going through, because I've been through it. Because we are made in God's image. And God loves all. Yeah. It's really hard for us to take that lens, put them under it, and be like, can I love this person? Can I meet my obligations? And let's not be confused. It's an obligation. I took an oath to live this lifestyle. I have an obligation to live that lifestyle. So I know that was a rant, but I just wanted to hit that point. And that's how I believe. So that's why I can so easily take Eastern philosophy and mix it in.
So the thing that made me think of was a Latin phrase, lex orandi, lex credendi.
You can put that in Google Translate. He doesn't know Latin. That was
lex
completely
orandi.
Made up.
Yeah, lex orandi, lex credendi. And what that means is that the law of prayer is a law of belief.
Correct.
And really, I think we can ask ourselves, what is prayer? Yeah. And prayer is an internal and an external exercise. But that shapes, prayer very much shapes your internal sense.
Well, define it for them. They have no idea what you're saying. Define what do you think prayer is? Because you just hinted on it. But what define prayer?
So, what are you doing personally to encounter God?
So inwardly.
Yeah.
So you're inward.
Yes.
Once again.
Yep. And I think the question we can ask about prayer specifically is, what are people doing to orient their inner world toward heaven? You know? Because the thing is, I can tell you this, if they're concentrating on themselves, they're concentrating on pleasure, what they're doing is they're orienting themselves toward they're attaching themselves to the pleasures of this world. And when you find your meaning in the pleasures of this world, you've got really nothing to contribute to this world. You know, you've really got nothing to you've got nothing to enrich others with. You know, and I guess it's kind of ironic that the more you concentrate on yourself, in an enlightenment sense, and the more egocentric you are, the less yourself you become. The more concentrated on on God you become, and the more disciplined you become, the more yourself you become. And that's sort of the ironic thing.
See, that's what I was talking about.
And that reminds me of what you said earlier about people who are very self-centered. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly what you said, but they kind of become like a collapsing, cratering star. You know, they're
could not have said it
they're
better.
dying, and they're grabbing and latching on to everyone else.
That's what a dying star does.
Yes,
I could not have said that better myself. And I'm going to let you spitball this back, but so every galaxy.
I'm done. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, yeah. So you have, when you get science, right? You have stars, living stars, right? Sun. We cannot live without our sun, right? Or without our sun, I should say. 7. Without our sun. So even science says that we're made in stardust, right? Mm-hmm. That science says that humans are made of stardust, blah, 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 blah. Ancient civilizations worship the sun. We sleep at night, right? You have light, you have dark, right? Our cycles naturally.
Based on the sun.
Yeah, plants grow based off the solar energy, correct? Like, all of this, I truly believe it. We said this before, that when science gets to the top of that hill, it will see that religion's been there the whole time. And I truly believe this. So if you take all that, right, we're made of stardust. Every living, thriving galaxy has a star that is alive, right? So you take these things. You have light, it's warmth. Darkness is cold, good, evil. You take all these things and you start blending them in there, right? You cannot, when you look at the self, when you look at God and he's in this creativeness and you look in yourself, you can't become your own God. And I think that's the problem that we have in modern society, is that I think you and I look at it a little differently. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking inward and holding yourself to these standards. Not to become a self-martyr, not to take the place of Jesus in what he was sent to do, right? God in human form. Not to become your own God, which is the purpose of that. That's why I'm saying that I know it sounds like it's so easy, like, oh, I took Eastern philosophy and I mixed it in. I can see very damn well where people would take that and become lost very quickly. Not that I'm some genius on theology and I've done all this stuff. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not even saying that I have it figured out. I'm saying that I was able to blend it, that you cannot, the whole point of this is you cannot be your own end. There has to be something more. And I think modern society, like I said, I don't even think people realize they're doing this. They take that and they understand the concept that I can't be my own end. So they become subservient or sacrificial lambs to the greater good, whether that be government, whether that be the ideology or the clan that they run with, whether it's, far left, far right, like this is my team. People start taking that because they are made in God's image. Whether you believe in him or not, he believes you. And that's a point. So I think it's very interesting on these things that I don't find a problem with looking inward as long as you know that there is an outward definition that you are subject to and have an obligation to. Whether you're a Christian or not, you are not outside the rules of what has been laid before us. Right. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
No, listen, I agree with you. I think what you're saying is that your internal house has got to be properly ordered.
Right.
Has to. You would not move into a house that inside the only piece of furniture you have are a trampoline and a water fountain.
I'm glad you don't do a full view of this because it's all I have in here.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, and yes, you've got a lot of work to do, but the thing is, I think what you're saying is that that you've got to properly order yourself internally.
You have to.
And I back to Jesus and the woman at the well. That's exactly what he told her. He met her where she was. She had broken a lot of laws. She was a sinner, very, very imperfect. But he met her where she was, and he told her, go, you're forgiven. Go and sin no more. And what he's telling her to do is to go and properly order your life. And so the inner world and the outer world, our inner sense and reality, they're so closely related because of, exactly what you pointed out earlier, Shannon, is that the humans are very programmable creatures.
Yes.
We're always imitating what we see.
Right.
And we're imitating other people's desires and things.
Right.
And I think that's the core of it, is we've got to be aware of what we're imitating and what we're being programmed by.
Right.
And we have to be very careful about who we're imitating, what we're imitating, and what we're programmed by.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, the Gospels say, and this is not the synoptic Gospels. I'm not talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I believe it's in one of the epistles of Paul. He said, let man examine himself, right? And then also, see, I think Christianity is very aware of the shortcomings of mankind, right? Because, because Paul said another thing. He said, that I ought not do, I often do. And that I should do, I do not. Right?
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? So even St. Paul was aware of his shortcomings. You know what I mean? And so this is the thing. I think Christianity is aware of the fact that humans are very frail. And we are very susceptible to what other people do. You know what I'm saying? And we all want to be. We all want to believe that what we're doing is the right thing, or we're in the right step. Whether that's in the right step with God or the right step with people, right? We all want to believe that what we're doing is heading in the right direction, right? But the thing is that I think we all have to remember that we're frail human beings. We need the grace of God to keep us on the right track. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, man, you know, we all need salvation. And I know I say that a lot, and that, you know, it sounds like it's cliche, but it's the truth. You know what I'm saying? Because none of us, you know, are you know, none of us are, you know, are Jesus. You know, none of us are Christ. You know what I'm saying? We are not a perfect man. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And once we begin to realize that, you know, firstly, I think we begin to understand that, hey man, I got to work on myself first, right? Like you were saying, right, Nico? You know, I have to examine myself first. You know,
take inventory of yourself.
Right. Take inventory, you know, of yourself, and then, you know, once you're able to grasp hold of that, that don't mean you're not gonna have stumbling blocks, right? You know what I mean? What we call, you know,
Nico's got plenty of them. You know,
I've had 2 in my whole life. I'm the closest thing to a perfect man.
You know, that don't, you know, that don't mean we're not gonna have, you know, our problems. You know what I'm saying? You know, but the one other thing that I would say that Christianity does, you know, give us is this sense that, you know, we can hold one another up. We can hold each other accountable, and we can also lift our brethren.
Accountability and empathy.
Yeah.
You nailed the 2 on the head.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
We can hold people accountable and still be empathetical to them.
Right.
I could not agree with you more.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You know.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. No. I'm. You know. I'm done giving my sermon. You know what I'm saying? I've been preaching all night. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. Christianity is more like a culture.
Yeah.
It's a nation.
Right.
You know, and that's exactly what the Apostle Paul says about it.
Right.
And you know, it's a kingdom.
Yeah.
And Jesus Christ is king.
That's right.
And I think that we lose sight of that very often, especially in this world that is kind of that's been you know, marinated in the juices of secularism. Mm. I think it's very important that we remember that, you know, well, Paul said, there is no Jew, there is no Greek, there is no male, there is no female, that we are all one in Christ. And I think that is the only way that human beings can ever truly be at peace with one another, because at the end of the day, human beings are tribal, you know? And I suppose that we can probably distinguish one tribe from another based upon what their most commonly held desires are, you know, on an anthropological level.
Yeah.
But Christianity is the thing that's able to transcend the tribe and is able to bring people together.
Right.
And I think unfortunately, as time goes on, in the West, as we, you know, really over the 20th century, we lost sight of Christ, lost sight of the church. And what's been happening in other parts of the world, one of the places in particular, like Africa, we have seen, you know, Christianity is growing, and it's growing exponentially. And it's growing in droves, and I think a lot of the reason for that is that they're under persecution, you know, and the church tends to thrive under persecution, which you know, in light of Christ, I think any movement tends to thrive under persecution, and I think we're going to see the West is going to become more balkanized as time goes on, where people are going to become more tribal, and they're going to battle one another based upon their tribal lines. And
well, that's already been happening for the last 30 years.
I mean, you know, you look at the culture wars in America.
Well, not 30 years. I mean, that's been happening since our foundation. But I mean, you can really see it on day to day in the last 30.
Well, the thing is, like the you know, the time leading up to the Civil War was very geographical.
Yeah, correct.
But today
You
the
used to have
differences.
huge swath of regions to where now it's
Yeah. Well, today in America, this culture war, it's not geographical.
It's not.
It's purely, it's ideological and it's religious.
100%.
And you can look at Europe, and the same thing is happening there. I think a couple of conversations ago, you and I talked about how Europe is becoming a museum
Of past glories.
of past glories. And how we said that Europe in many ways has just become an unwanted child of the United States, culturally.
It's a windbag, man.
Yeah. But I know I sound gloom and doom about the future of the traditional West.
You've always sounded that way.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
But I'm actually very optimistic about the future of Africa, in particular, because the church is growing in droves there, and I think as time goes on, as they recognize Jesus Christ as their King, I think those tribal differences that are really the hallmark of Africa right now, where you have all these you have Kenya as a country, but it's really not a country. It's a bunch of tribes that are all fighting each other and competing for dominance. I think as time goes on, I think those tribal differences are going to become as relevant as the tribal differences between the Gauls and the Visigoths,
right,
and even the Vikings and stuff in Europe.
Right. They got you might say that they got a late start. You know what I'm saying? In their walk with Christ, right? I mean, and I didn't try to. I wasn't trying to cut you off.
No,
but I do think that the places in which Christianity wasn't able to become very pervasive, that's where you'll begin to see a lot of the awakening of the gospels being lived out. You know what I'm saying? Because they have been dealing with tribal factions for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And yes, I do think that in some places, I don't want to say the whole of Europe, right? But I want to say in a lot of places in Western Europe, there and the United States is included. Okay, let's not exclude the United States and Canada, right? These places are losing their faith, their sense of morality, right? Their standards, what they're going to stand on. You know what I'm saying? And that's not to be like neocon with it. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say, hey man, we're going to go on some kind of holy crusade. But the point is that, I think these nations in Africa and say, Southeast Asia and places like that, they wholeheartedly understand what tribalism brings. And they know that because they've been living it for so long. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just, places like, say, the Congo, whatever, you know what I mean? That's or Kenya, right? It's, damn near just about any place in Africa you can think about, right? You know what I'm saying? It is very tribal, right? But that's the culture, right? But I do think that once that spirit of, not revival in the sense of Protestantism takes off, but the sense of revival in the sense that, we can do more than what we're doing if we stand together. You know what I'm saying? Under Christ, they will be the example. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And I think we've lost our way in terms of, trying to preach a certain level of the social gospel. You know what I'm saying? that's been sort of on the megaphone, you know, and I think that that's, you know, and you know, like we've said, like we've talked about before, that's not to say that you know, the social gospel doesn't have its place. That's not to say that liberation doesn't have its place, but I think that has been grafted by politics, you know what I'm saying, by the political, and been turned into the, you know, sort of standard by which Christians are supposed to live. You know what I'm saying? We got to let everything, you know, to say anything that goes against, you know, what we believe to be true or what the gospel say. That's sort of like, you know, anti-Christian. You know what I mean? And, you know, whether we like it or not, you know, the gospels do teach against, you know, certain social norms that we have sort of taken, you know, in the 21st century. You know what I'm saying? And we can't, you know, deny that. You know what I'm saying? That, I mean, there's a way we're supposed to live as Christians, right? But I think this goes back to your point, Nico, where you talk about Christians practicing what they preach. I think once we begin to understand that and kind of get back to that, then we'll be taken more seriously. You know what I'm saying? People will start to say, okay, you know, Christianity is not a fluke religion. You know what I'm saying? It's not a faith where, you know, these people are just talking, you know, just because they want to change the political sphere, but they're saying it because it's the truth. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they believe. And even if they don't conform to that, I think they can take the sense that they respect it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because I'll take it even further, right? When you look at the Muslims, right? And I'm not trying to go Andrew Tate on anybody, you know, but when you look at the Muslims, right? You know, the West, you know, a lot of these people, you know, on the extreme left and stuff like that, you know, they respect Muslims insofar as they believe that they are a minority who's subjected, right? But I think Christians can do a better job in saying, no, we have the same values, right? And most people, I think, who are whether they're conservative Christians or they just say, look, man, I believe what the word says, right? It might be the sola scriptura types, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. They say, no, we have more in common with them than the trans people, than the LGBTQ, right? And we're gonna find more alliance with them than they will, right? And so I think once we begin to actually practice what we preach, you know what I'm saying, and we stand on that, you know what I'm saying, then we will turn the tides, you know what I'm saying? And also, here's another thing I want to say. I think Christians have a greater ability to be way more innovative, to take us out of these social ills that we're in than any other religion
100%.
that exists. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I mean, that's you know, that's one thing I will say. I mean, we have the vision, right? We have the hope, and that all boils down to Christ, right? Because Christ said you will do greater things than these. You know what I'm saying? That is possible, right? And we just have to have the vision. We have to believe, you know, in the message of Christ, that, you know, we can transcend a lot of these social problems, right? And that your identity is not made up in how many times, you can get people to cut off their breasts or their genitalia, right? But it's made up in how can you get people to see a world that, is much better than the one they were in, not from a standpoint of like, social justice, but like transcending some of the ills that we've had on a social basis, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, that's got to be some kind of transhumanism. I don't necessarily believe Christianity has to go that route, right? But I do believe that Christianity has to, it has to reignite that sort of, scientific sort of inquiry.
Well, don't you think that Christianity, we oftentimes point to the Enlightenment as being the thing that kind of bore the all the innovations of the modern world, but really in many ways it kind of set us back.
Yes.
And the thing that Christianity teaches us, first and foremost, well, not first and foremost, but one of the positive consequences of Christianity, one of the blessings of it is we're able to have a real understanding of reality and our relationship to it. And because of that clarity that it brings us, we're able to innovate materially,
Right.
And
Science didn't do that.
Right.
Christians did that to themselves.
well, and the thing I would say, just like we said, the last conversation we have, I don't even remember what day it was, that Thomas Aquinas was kind of the inventor of the modern sciences, because Thomas Aquinas was the first one that said, okay, remember that philosophy means philosophia, love of knowledge. Thomas Aquinas was the first one to say, well, you know what? In our love of knowledge, what we're going to do is we're going to suspend the logical necessity to think about and consider and pursue the original cause, so that we can explore, kind of like local material causes, like and that bore things like chemistry, where Thomas Aquinas would say, well, we don't necessarily. We already know that the original cause was God. Because we know that, what we can do is we're going to suspend the logical necessity for going automatically to theology, and what we're going to do is we're going to pursue the study of matter. And so what Christianity allowed, it gave humanity the permission to pursue material innovation. And I think that is something that we oftentimes forget, and I think because we've forgotten it, we have lost the very thing that inspired us to pursue the material innovation and to innovate materially.
Right. Well, okay. I'm gonna say this. In my opinion, I think that what happened, say with the Industrial Revolution and the scientific enlightenment, what took place was sort of a grafting of the social revolution onto the sciences. Right? There was a lot of innovation going on. You know what I'm saying? We talk about Newton and Leibniz and all these people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were Christians, right?
Can you expound that a little bit more?
Okay.
Tease that out a little more?
So, I guess my point is that these people never thought of themselves as being anti-Christian. You know what I'm saying? They believed that they were Christians, and they believed that science was a grace and a gift from God. You know what I'm saying? But you have people like Rousseau, you know what I mean, and you know, Voltaire, you know, and a lot of these social scientists who wanted to use the scientific enlightenment as a way to further their social programs. You know what I'm saying? Which started the French Revolution. You understand what I'm saying? So I think a lot of times what happens is that science, you know, which I believe, you know, we found science because of Christianity.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? That didn't come out of some enlightenment from the 18th century, you know what I'm saying, or 17th century. That came from our ability to understand that, first of all, working together is the best way to get things done. Now, how could you have that? How could you know that, right, had it not been for Christianity? Because if you talk about Europe, right, and you spoke about this, right, in the medieval, in the you know, post late antique, early medieval ages, Europe was in, you know, a uproar, right? Because all these different tribes were fighting each other, particularly the Germanic tribes, right?
They're always the Germans are always in an uproar, Shannon. I mean,
And I'm, you know,
when are they not?
And I'm not, you know, I'm not knocking the Germanic tribes. You know what I'm saying? The Franks, I love the Franks.
Me too.
They're cool people. You know what I mean? But
Just don't count on them to be your allies in a war or something, right?
but
One or two.
but the thing is that what brought them together? What brought them to the point to where they could create monasteries, where they started writing books, right? You had scribes and they built universities. That's only because they began to, first of all, they understood that they needed Christ in that humility. You know what I'm saying? In order to create those types of institutions, right? Where they could sit down as brothers and monks and monastics in a place and create, you know what I'm saying? Create, you know, and create beautiful, you know, books like the Book of Kells. You know what I'm saying? Create the University of Bologna. You know what I mean? That came out of Christianity, man. Mm-hmm. And my thing is that what happened is that what came after was where the sort of bourgeoisie. These are not people who were aristocrats, but they were learned men. You know what I'm saying? They had the knowledge and they read, right? The Greek philosophers and the Roman rhetoricians, right? They were the ones to, I think, start a lot of the uproar that would come out of like the French Revolution. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, you know, the Rousseaus and the Voltaires, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, there's a lot of others, you know, a lot of these French intellectuals who came out of the 18th century, stuff like that, you know. But what I always find is that the social sciences and those who engage in the social sciences, oftentimes they create social upheaval after a lot of the people who've been doing the hard sciences have been doing a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? The chemists or the biologists or the, you know, even if some of the biologists and the physicists are wrong, like these people who talk about, you know, string theory and multiverse, you know what I'm saying? But the point is that they take a lot of those things and they want to make it a social experiment, right? So like, for instance, you know, you got, you know, people talking about string theory and the multiverse. Well, that used to be just a theory. Like when we were coming up in high school, that was sort of like it hadn't taken off. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. It was talked about vaguely.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really like we didn't impress upon it. Like
Right.
now
Right.
it's so commonly accepted that it's even in
They
what
make
we
Marvel
under-
movies
that's what I was
based
saying,
upon
in our
it. You know?
entertainment,
Right.
It's even to
Right.
that point.
Yeah.
Where
Right.
There's multiple selves, so don't worry about this one.
Right.
You can
Right.
fuck up this one,
Right.
but there's 10 others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And now see. So what is that? Right? It's scientists coming up with ideas and theories and stuff like that. And then what happens? Now that's being taken out of the sort of scientific sphere into the social sphere, right? The media, you know what I'm saying? The movies and everything. Now it's like, well, the multiverse is real. You know what I'm
it's
saying?
the thing. Yeah.
Right. And so we're going to program everyone to believe that that's true. Well, that's the same thing that, the Rousseaus and the Voltaires came up with. Well, if Newton is talking about this and Leibniz is talking about that, and Rene Descartes is saying this, well, then how can I take all those ideas and transform them into sort of a social theory? You know what I'm saying? To change my society, right? If Darwin is saying this, well, then how can I take that theory of biology and turn it into a sort of social gospel? You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that these scientists were correct, but I'm just saying that I think that a lot of times the social scientists, or for whatever they were, the philosophers, they take those ideas and they spread them, throughout society. You know what I'm saying? And they make what they will. And then everybody, they attach themselves to that. And then that's where you get all this, Black Lives Matter and, you know what I'm saying, Me Too, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? But that's my take on that.
I don't think you are.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So you have to find if there's not already a truth out there
Yeah.
that's absolute, you have to find the truth. And I will say this because you nailed it on the head earlier. When it comes to the Muslims, you do find that. So I always find it funny that so you have the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, and they all pray to the same God, right? I mean, theoretically, right? It's all the same God.
Yeah.
They're trying to, at least.
Yeah.
The Christians are the only ones that actually make it.
So you have that, right? I will say that when Christians encountered science, right? Instead of coming to a spearheaded truth, we came to a crossroaded truth. And I feel that Muslims have done a very good job of, they didn't come to anything. They have stayed as the newest of the three, which is, most people don't know that. Muslims are the newest of the three of those that pray to the same God. They stayed very steadfast.
Right.
And Shane mentioned this earlier, that Christianity is thriving in Africa, but
Right.
the fastest growing religion in Africa is Muslim.
Yeah.
So when you have that, they've stayed very outfield, if you will, and they've stayed very steadfast in their beliefs.
Right.
So it's almost that where you found that the extremisms that we talked about with Buddhism, you had to find that middle ground. So you have Christians that were like, instead of spearheading to the same point with science and religion, we were like, oh, and we kind of did a V. Muslims were like, oh, we're just staying right on our path.
Right.
There's that happy medium where you can be like, religion doesn't have to contradict your religious beliefs.
Right.
It can actually support it.
Right.
But
Right.
people have to find their truth.
Right.
Whether that's through religion or science. When we come closer together and realize that the truth is the truth,
Yeah.
and that these two things that we have, religion and science, they're not enemies, they're not contradicting forces. That was the fastest urination in the world, by the way. You really wanted to get back here. So when we acknowledge that these aren't,
It was like Niagara Falls for the record, and that's scientific.
like a tiny creek.
Yeah.
in a backwards palm. So when you realize that these aren't two boxers that are meeting to see who's victorious, it's one boxer that just needs to decide which punch he's throwing. That they are in complete what do you call it when you have things that live in unison?
Synergy.
Synergy. Thank you, Shane. When you have the synergy between science and religion, you realize that they don't contradict each other. No. The things that we get hung up on are so insignificant. People are like, they're almost like gotcha. No, you didn't. They're so in synergy with each other that they do support each other. And like I said earlier, like people are like, well, we're made of stardust. And if God made us from the dirt of the earth, it's like that we get caught up on these arbitrary little things to be like, gotcha, my truth's the truth, your truth. There's one truth.
Yeah.
And no matter what path you take, you will get to that same truth. The cards are on the table. There's no cards that aren't face up. You just have to follow the path to there. But I do find that interesting that the Muslims, they are the fastest growing religion in the world, I believe, percentage wise. You said that Christianity is thriving in Africa, but I know that Muslim is actually the fastest growing religion.
Well, Christianity is thriving in while it's being martyred in Africa.
Correct, and we touched on that earlier too.
Yeah,
we got a lot here, boys. I don't know if we almost table this.
Yeah,
because I mean, how?
Well, I've got one final point to make that's kind of building on yours.
Okay.
So I hope you guys have 47 minutes.
Can I say something before you say that?
Yeah, go ahead.
53.
So now that's a very good point you made, right, about Islam being the fastest growing religion, right? But I think the crux here is that it's because Muslims are not they're not no, I'm good, brother. They're not contradictory in terms of their religious teaching about procreation.
That is truth.
You understand what I'm saying?
Well, and also too, I think a lot of us in the West have a tendency to view Muslims as being like a foreign religion,
right?
But actually, you're the first one who ever mentioned this to me, and I went down that rabbit trail. So it is. So according to the Christian perspective, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah, rack it up, man.
Yeah. So Islam is most likely a heresy.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the thing I was thinking about is either Islam is a heresy of Christianity or Christianity is a heresy to Islam.
Well, Christianity was before it.
Right. And that's the reason that I worded it the way I did that.
Right.
That either Islam is a heresy of Christianity or Christianity is a heresy to Islam.
Yeah. So
real quick, I'm going to let you reply. What's your point there, though?
Well, I think when you get down to the core of it, there are a lot of downstream implications to this, but Jesus either was God and man, or Jesus was man, and that Jesus had the nature of man, and that there was a separate nature of God that somehow manifested itself. And the thing is that you see this in the Nestorian heresy within Christian history, and it seems, I'm not definitively saying this, but it seems that Islam came about at the same time as the Nestorian heresy.
All right. So what's your take? What's the Christian take on that of your two choices?
That Islam's wrong and Christianity's correct.
No. Don't be so definitive on the definition you set. What would you say the Christian take on how Jesus presented himself.
That Jesus was God and man.
God and man.
Yeah. And
I'm okay with this.
And
I thought you were going the other way.
And the Islam take on it would be that Jesus was man, but not like an average ordinary man like you and I, but one like the greatest prophet,
Like a prophet, yeah. Just say prophet, yeah.
But as far as I understand it, and I could be misunderstanding it, but I believe that Muslims understand Jesus to be the greatest prophet to ever come to earth, to ever exist. Am I correct?
This is definitely, I think, a topic to bring up next time.
This
Yes.
is a part two because
because-
we're about to go wild.
Because first, for one, there's some people that I want some academics.
And I, for the record, I have a lot of respect for
Yeah.
devout Muslims.
Hey, hey, look, man.
I agree.
I don't got no problem with
Yes,
this.
I agree with them about as much as they agree with me.
Yeah.
But
You
I've
just
got
told me before the podcast that you didn't.
well you're clearly misremembering that.
I never misremember. Like
No,
a still trap.
But
You always misremember.
But I would say this. I've been told by an academic that you could say the emergence of Islam came out of the matrix of Christological discourse about the nature of Christ. Okay, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
Boys, let's do this again. Let's that right there. I need you to write that down, what he just said. Can we do another podcast, the three of us?
Sure.
And start right there.
For sure.
Because, boy, did we just take this, and we were talking about a shooting. And, man, did we just get another 3 hours
Wow.
worth of content on that one sentence.
Right.
And I have enjoyed the hell out of myself.
Oh, me too.
And I hope you guys weren't
this has
bored to
been
death
fun, man.
because that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think the statement you just said is so profound
Yeah.
that it deserves a podcast by itself. That one sentence,
Yeah.
I literally think it's 3 hours worth of content.
Yeah.
And I may have written down what our next podcast needs to be in hieroglyphics.
What?
So
You literally have incest and Christianity. That's not what we were talking about. I don't know why he wrote that, but I will remember.
Look, man, I want to thank you guys again for inviting me to your podcast. This has been like super fun, man. I have not been.
I've had a blast too.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do this in a very long time. You know what I mean? To be able to sit down with friends and actually talk over a podcast, that's been, the high. This has been this. Being able to do in-person podcasts has been the highlight of my, my visit down here, and I really thank you guys for
Thank you for
bringing
coming.
me on, man.
And the next time it's going to be four of us, and all three of us know who that fourth person's going to end up being.
Oh yeah.
I-
Oh yeah.
Are you talking about Father DG?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. And I just want to make a statement right here on the podcast.
The Catholic apologist.
Yeah, the Catholic apologist. If you ever travel 3,126 miles again,
Yeah.
that door right there is open to you.
I appreciate that.
Okay, absolutely, 100%.
So there is one thing that I want to throw in because I could overhear when I had to go and run an errand a few minutes ago.
When you were unprofessional and you left the podcast
Yep.
off screen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do want to throw something out there that there's. So talking about science and religion, I think we can kind of distill that down to talking about reason and faith, right? And in the West, we have kind of adopted over the last few centuries, since the Enlightenment, this whole idea that somehow faith and reason are at odds with one another, that
No.
that the two are at war.
No. Write down faith and reason.
Here,
No, no.
okay, here. Well, listen. This will just be a little interlude. Okay.
This is a little pre
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
next
exactly, yeah.
5 hours of us.
This
ranting.
is merely the appetizer to the appetizer, you know?
This is a
So-
little tease.
So think about reason as being, and science, as being a way, an active way of us grasping truth, right? And remember that we encounter truth, generally speaking, in that objective reality that we all partake in, right? So it's really kind of an external adventure. Then faith, on the other hand, is our ability to receive truth internally. And I think that's a very important, and the thing is, both are critical to being able to understand, to being able to understand and receive truth. You know, I don't think you can receive truth and understand it without both faith and reason. Yeah, you know, and I think you can say that faith is like trust. And before you start thinking that this is some brand new innovation that I had while I was running my errand, this actually. These are actually the thoughts of
Pope Benedict,
Saint John Paul II.
Oh, nice.
In his papal encyclical Fides et Ratio, which
Back in the
which in Latin means faith and reason.
this is in the late 80s.
He wrote it in like the 90s, I think.
Was it early 90s?
Yeah, I think he wrote it during all the Clinton stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, like I mean,
Mid-90s then.
not in response to Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, but I think it just happened at the same time. You know, correlation does not always equal causation, Nico.
I just
all
want to
right?
say this, Shane, I don't want to speak for you,
Yeah.
but I'm going to abstain from Shane's mental masturbation, and then we table this for another day. But it's
Okay.
totally up to you if you want to respond. I'm going to abstain
No,
from it.
I have nothing to say. I
Yeah.
would say
we're
going
gonna
to
ignore what he said.
I would
I
say
didn't
that-
even hear him. Look at this. Boop.
Right. 'Cause I would say the most dangerous thing we've said so far on this podcast is bringing up Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, very
Right.
dangerous.
But you know, that's definitely something we can bring up
I check.
the next time.
Dude,
That
if you
sounds
let
good to
this
me.
guy rant, he'll break his arm just masturbating that brain. Like he just goes at it. So I think
it's purely intellectual though.
write it
I mean,
down.
you know?
Write it down so we don't forget.
That's
In the
all right
next
with me.
podcast, you're in.
I'm in.
All right.
I'm totally in.
Looks
man.
like we got our next guest.
I will fly back down here.
He's
just to do that.
3,126 miles.
Sir.
and I just wrote that one down in hieroglyphics too.
There we go.
We're actually not going to talk about it. But
Not-
we're just letting.
Listen, not Egyptian hieroglyphics, but just hieroglyphics.
He writes like he's in third grade, so I think this is good to
Yeah.
wrap up. Yeah,
Yeah, but not like Egyptian.
Yeah,
third
no.
grade, but just like
like
third grade. But if a third grader wrote in hieroglyphics,
okay,
which is probably a certain percentage of third
Eighth
graders,
grade
I'm guessing.
level, yeah.
Shorthand.
Yeah.
Shorthand. We'll say that.
All
Okay.
right, gentlemen. I think
All right,
that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
Gentlemen.
Nico, thank you for the Elijah Craig. It was delicious.
We polished off 2 bottles of not only scotch but
That's
bourbon.
right.
We mixed today, gentlemen.
Yeah, that's
All
right.
right. Good stuff, gentlemen.
All right.
Good
Thank
stuff.
you so much, man.
Shannon,
Absolutely,
thank you.
guys.
Thank you, brother.
See you next time.
All right.